about the arrows, which way they're flipped, because honestly, that's never going to come up, ever. Like, other than in a book with a drawing, you're never really going to see that in practical application. So, but I did want to kind of spend a little bit of time here looking at these. So most people can get this, right? These are the three circles. So you have the radius 12, 14, and 18. Is anybody stuck on that part? I think that one's like super easy. So past that, the way I would do this is I would draw these guys for the teeth, okay? And there's a variety of ways you can do it. Some people are like, look, I go from the end of this guy out one in each direction, because they tell you that the tooth right here is 2, right? All the way over to this guy. They tell you that dude is 2. And it's typical. So it means every tooth is 2, right? So anytime you see that TYP, that's going to be typical. So as you're doing this, you could just draw over, that's fine. The way I did it is I offset that guy. But again, you know, I don't know that one is better than the other. It's fine either way. But I did an offset of 1, and I just offset in each direction. 1. The downside of doing it this way is you can't really control the height of this. So it can give you some trimming issues if you do it that way, right? Because this line, as you can see, does not breach that circle. So in that case, I need to just kind of like elongate that guy a little bit. So I'm just gonna drag that and make sure that those cross.
Are you using the extend command?
You could use extend. I've honestly been, for the time it takes for extend, I usually just grab the grip and drag it down. So, but some people love extend. I think it's the same amount of time, really. So as I'm trimming this thing, I'm going to trim off these guys, top and bottom. And I'm going to trim off these guys as far as the teeth, and then the outside of the circle. So I get 1 tooth. Okay. I don't really need that dude because that's just a layout line, so I'm just measuring up with that. And at this point, I would array this around. So I'm going to go polar array, these guys, enter, of course, because I'm done selecting. And I'm going to choose my center point. And this thing, there are 20 of them. I'm sure you counted. So I'm going to array those guys, right? And at this point, I would close the array, but I need to trim these, right? I need to take the chunks out of them. So as I'm in here, instead of closing it and then clicking on it and reopening it, I know I'm going to go on to the next step. And so then I'm going to keep clicking these guys, okay? So I would just keep trimming that. And just to fast forward that, I made this one, just because you don't want to watch me trim, all right? So once you're done with this thing, I have this all trimmed out, and I'm going to start focusing on this guy right here. Now, this thing, you could do a variety of ways again. I looked at this like from the print reading standpoint. I know that I have a gap here, and I think that you guys would agree that that's at 0 degrees, right? Straight across. And then I know that I have another gap here, right? And then as I keep going, there are 6 of them. Would you agree with that? 6, right? Gaps, if you will. So I know that if I have 360 degrees, and I'm dividing it by 6 gaps, that they are every how many degrees? 60 degrees, okay? So my gaps are at 60, which means that this guy is dead in the middle of 2 gaps. So the center of this is at what? 30, right? Does that make sense? And again, there's other ways to do it. That's the way I did it. You don't have to do it that way, but I think that's pretty easy. As I look at this, I'm like, okay, so I know that there's 6 arrows. I know there's 6 gaps. So I know that if every gap is at 60 degrees, then every arrow falls halfway between. Okay? So again, you don't have to do it that way, but that's the way I did it. So as I'm going through here, I'm going to set my polar snap at 30 degrees. And I'm going to pop this guy out. somewhere. I have no idea where, but somewhere out there. I know that's gonna be the center of my arrow. I also know that this guy right here has a space that I'm going to utilize a line for layout. I need to know how long this area right here is, and they tell me that it's 72 overall, right? So 72 divided in half is 36 from the center point. I hope you get where I'm going with that. Okay, they tell you this overall dimension is 72, but I'm from the middle, so I'm gonna draw this 36. So this line that I'm drawing, I'm gonna go out 36. And then straight up somewhere. I have no idea where, but that is going to be the center of this guy. They tell you that the offset of that thing is 8, so I'm going to offset that 4, right, above. So I'm going to offset that guy 4 above. So I just did that right there. See it? I was at the center and I went 4 up. So this line you see is actually that area highlighted blue. It doesn't have the notch, but it's the line. Okay? So that's the way I handled that. At that point, I don't need this guy anymore. I hope you agree that was just for layout, right? So from here, I can also, if you want to clean it up just to make it look good, you can trim that guy off. I don't really need it for anything. And I also don't need any of this, and you know, some people just choose to leave it, but. Okay. So from this corner, which is actually this corner right here, that guy, I'm right here now, okay? And they tell me that this little notch is 2 up. Well, it also happens to be, if I subtract 68 from 72, I'm gonna get 4, but divided again by 2, because I'm only working on half, okay? So the notch starts to be like this. I go over 2, and I lock on ortho for that guy, and then I go up 2,
Did you make that
over
5?
2. And I'm gonna do all of that guy, and as soon as I go over 2, up 2, over 2, down 2, over 2, the inside is gonna be straight up again, right where it hits this line. That's gonna be the center. Okay, what was your question?
That one line is 45, right?
30.
That's right.
Okay, so now I don't need that layout line. This is this guy. So again, I'm gonna offset this guy. It tells me that the arrows are all 8, right? So I'm at the midpoint of the arrow here. I think we agreed on that's my 30-degree line. Okay? So I'm gonna offset from that guy 4, that's half of the 8. And I'm gonna go this way. And at this point, I don't need that line anymore. That was just my midpoint. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that just for a second, because you'll see in a minute here. I'm gonna trim this guy, and you're gonna kind of see it develop here as an arrow. Love it. Great job. Thanks, guys.
So welcome.
So I got all this guy now. This is the bottom of my arrow. And I'm going to, and again, there are other ways to do this. Please don't feel like you have to do it my way. But I mirrored this through. You could have just arrayed it and then drawn the other half. But I'm going to mirror that through that guy. Okay? And at that point, now I can get rid of this. I just use that as a mirror reference. So now I have that guy. Apparently I didn't trim that right. So it tells me all of these fillets are 5. So I know that this guy right here is 5, this guy right here is 5. So I'm gonna just give those a radius of 5, and it's gonna look something like that, okay? So at this point, I also need to give this a radius of 5, right? Because they told me this outside one is also 5 typical. So I'm gonna do that. all of this guy, and I'm pretty much ready to array this at this point. So I'm gonna array, and I'm gonna choose all of these guys. Make sure I get as many as I can here. Enter. I'm gonna go around that center point, and I'm gonna get something that looks like this. I'm gonna, again, while it's selected, I'm gonna explode that because I need to be able to trim it. So if you remember, we talked last week that you have to explode these guys in order to trim them. So I'm gonna just pop these guys out of there, and then I get something that looks like that. So, so you know,